Hi, lovies. It's Christina with Karma's Eye Psychic LLC here on Universal Spirit Podcast, coming at you again with another bonus episode. And we are going to talk about spiritual psychosis. And the reason that this subject has become relevant is because recently a astrology influencer has taken the life of her husband and attempted to unalive her two children. And unfortunately, one of her children did not survive. However, the other one did survive by attempting to throw them out of a car in the middle of the highway. And then she proceeded to unalive herself by driving either into a pole or into a wall. So trigger warning to understand that this episode may include some graphic details about the case. The astrologer Danielle Johnson, 34, who posted on X, formerly known as Twitter, was your average, social media influencer. She talked about astrology and, how it affects us. And she is very popular with her podcast and all her appearances on Twitter and TikTok and everywhere you could find her. And for those who have been following not only the news, but social media up until the April 8th eclipse, there was a lot of fear mongering. There were a lot of crazy suggestions out there. There were a lot of over the top, allegations of what was supposed to happen that day. Religious people came out and had, mentioned that was the day of the rapture. For those of you who are not familiar, the rapture is this spiritual event known by mostly Christianity. That's the day when Jesus is going to come back and take all the people that he wants to take off the earth because they've been so great, and leave the rest of us here to burn in hell and everything like that. So apparently, according to their religious Bible, that this rapture, happens at the same time as some, planetary events such as an eclipse or a conjunction, right? So a lot of people were getting their hopes up. A lot of people were fear mongering, and a lot of people were telling people, hey, you should get right with the Lord. You should be doing this. You should be doing that. And it wasn't so long before the eclipse, a few days prior, that she had posted about how this eclipse is going to be spiritual warfare, that there are things that we need to be afraid of, or things that we need to be looking out for, or decisions that are very hard for us to make. We need to be making them now. It's now or never type kind of comments. And a lot of people believe that, the World War III was going to break out, or, the whole entire, world was going to explode or something. There was so many ideas out in regards to this eclipse, right? And it's not necessarily a coincidence, but things leading up to the eclipse, on a mundane, Mother Nature side, is that New Jersey and New York had experienced an earthquake, right? A 4.8 earthquake at that. So it was signaling to a lot of people that was some type of sign, or if that was like the sign, right? Like anything that they had thought up in their mind, not just Danielle, just a lot of people, just overhyping the situation, considering that eclipses have been happening since the beginning of time, in regards to the economy being so bad right now and people just, being miserable. They just assumed that this particular eclipse was going to be like something catastrophically bad, or, something super great, but whatever it was going to be life-changing. So some people, just like Danielle, decided to take their destiny into their own hands. Now, this is where it gets a little bit graphic, so if you don't want to listen any further, I would suggest you do not. So Danielle lived in California with her two children, 9-year-old and an 8-month-old infant, and her husband. in Woodland Hills. So on the day of the eclipse on April 8th, she then unalived her partner, Cheney, help me if I'm pronouncing it wrong, by stabbing him to death. They had an argument, but she was already inclined to do something major that day, and she took that day to unalive him in a very brutal, very violent way. And later on, she then took her 2 children on the highway, and then she proceeded to throw both of the children out of the car. Like I said before, the 9-year-old in fact did survive with major injuries. However, the 8-month-old did not survive for obvious reasons, okay? And she then continued to drive and to intentionally drive her car into a wall, and then she unalived herself. Now, I did say I was going to talk about spiritual psychosis, but I did have to get to the details of that story. I do have links below. And the biggest question is as to why she had decided to do this in particular. Why kill her entire family? Why unalive her entire family? Why specifically on the eclipse? And why would she post those particular, messages that she had on Twitter? Well, spiritual psychosis is a very real thing. Now, we do sometimes overlook spirituality, religion, and we tend to kind of overlook mental illness. But if you see or understand that somebody is, going into a religion or a practice or a culture with extreme intensity, right? With extreme intensity and with extreme, heavy, beliefs about it, and doesn't seem to eat or sleep without this particular thing, and it's become their whole life, that they are in the middle of what, psychologists would call a psychosis, where their belief system has taken over every part of their life to the point where it is because of their beliefs that they, in fact, make the decisions that they make. So for people who are, in, you would even say, like, religious psychosis, for them to only associate people who are religious, or people associate with people with only that of the religion that they believe in. Sorry guys, I can't talk today. And within the rules of that religion, if it says that you cannot wear pants, they will not wear pants. And if they say that you have to be back in, this time and that time, and etc. and etc. Okay, a psychosis is when you follow man-made rules to a T, to the point where you no longer have an identity, you no longer have your own, autonomy or personality, and there's like this, invisible either person or people that you're trying to impress with your actions or make proud with your actions. And a lot of people were wondering, well, what was she getting out of the fact that, unaliving her family? Like, what kind of belief system is that? Well, she had mentioned that she had believed that there was some very serious spiritual warfare going on. So if there was something that she felt was a threat to her, either through fear mongering or through a belief system that she had adopted, she clearly believed, to the best of her mental capacity, that she and her family were being under attack, or they had to be in the spirit that day, and she decided to take control over that and do it herself. I know it sounds like I'm rambling on, but just try to stay with me if you can. Okay, so did anything serious happen after the eclipse? From what I know and what I see, no. Okay, because I'm a magical practitioner, and nothing out of the ordinary has happened after the eclipse, right? However, she's never going to know that now, and the eclipse was not that, wasn't even 100% to where we were. At least I'm in New Jersey, who knows, right? But she believed that that day was so very significant that she had to be out of here by any means necessary before whatever she thought was going to take place took place. Now, this is not to deter you from whatever it is that you currently believe, right? Or, from what might think is in fact true. This is just to educate those, who are listening to me, who have seen a pattern with people who are very spiritual or who are very religious, tend to, go to the extremes for their beliefs. Okay? And it is, there is a healthy way of going to the extremes. There's nothing wrong with adopting, a new life. There's nothing wrong with adopting a new sense of self or even a sense of purpose, right? However, when you mix very extreme beliefs or how you're supposed to, execute those beliefs, along with either a mental illness, or with people who don't have much control over themselves, or people who feel as though they don't have any control at all, and that is their way of taking control. 9 out of 10 it would be unaliving someone, and usually it's unaliving themselves. However, everybody's mental state is different, where she felt as though she needed to unalive everyone, right? Because people would wonder, well, why didn't she just go around and unalive, random people or people that she knew were demonic or whatever, right? Because in her mind, she felt as though her family would be safer. She's only thinking about her and her family, right? Luckily, unfortunately, it would be more like, because other people do tend to take out their, very extreme, ideas or beliefs out on other people, mostly random people, right? So there was some form of control there, obviously, but at the same time, was out of control. It's no different than when you have terrorism in any part of the world. I'm not gonna, have it down to just one part of the world. There's terrorism everywhere. So, and a lot of terrorism has to do with some type of religious or spiritual belief, and it unfortunately traces all the way back to that, because sometimes, some people are lacking in, autonomy. People are lacking in a sense of self, that they feel attached to their religious beliefs and their spiritual beliefs as if that thing is themselves. So if somebody attacked, Christianity, someone who is an extremist believer would feel as though they are being personally attacked, as if that religion is almost like an extension of themselves, or they are an extension of that religion. Just to give a brief example. And as spiritual influencers, no different than religious influencers, if we have people following us, we know people are following our example, and we want to make sure that we come out on the right side of everything. And she must have believed that unaliving herself has her coming out on the right side of this eclipse, and not facing whatever she thinks, would be headed our way, that she would just not want to be physically a part of, okay, which she succeeded at doing. I do want to take a moment to, acknowledge the life loss with her husband, and the life loss of her 8-month-old daughter. That is absolutely terrible and horrific way to die. I feel absolutely, remorseful, sad, just hoping that at some point their soul can rest. And I really feel for the family at this time, whoever lost a brother or a son, okay, and obviously a dad, right? And also a daughter, losing a granddaughter, and losing a sister, okay? And everything else, that they were to people in their lives, okay? That I wanted to at least acknowledge that, they didn't die for nothing. People do care about what happened. People are going to get to the bottom of it. And obviously, this is something that's going to be studied for a very long time, especially because of how this extreme situation was executed. It will become something that our society is going to try to, in fact, improve upon, because we don't want to see any more lives torn apart. We don't want to see any more families, destroyed, and we definitely don't want to see any more lives lost, in all of the ways the lives were lost that day. Okay, they were all horrific, and they were not deserved. Okay, and they were just not justified. Okay, that's in my opinion. Okay, and it always saddens me personally to see any type of caregiver to children to really turn on them and hurt them in that way, because there are so many people out here in this world that would take in children, without ever thinking about hurting them. Okay, so as a mom myself, it just saddens me to see that. Also, in my opinion too, there are a lot of emotional and mental issues that mothers in general go through that is not talked about, that is very much overlooked, and it is seen as benign until something like this happens. The unfortunate part is people do not take it as seriously as if we live in some type of bubble where it can only happen on TV, or it can only happen to anything can happen to anyone at any point. That's the point of this universe. Okay, we all know very well what the risks are every day we wake up, every day we step outside. Like, there are a lot of things that we do not control. Okay, and we have to do our best to control the things that we can. That is our responsibility. And another one of our responsibilities is our emotional and our mental state, especially those, just really anyone, right? It really has no degree or level of importance. Everyone is important. Everyone's emotional and mental state is important. I just say in particular because of this situation where she was caring for children, and those children depended on her, and they depended on her to be in her best emotional and mental state, and to, had the responsibility of being an adult and putting them first when she in fact did not put them first. And that is a mistake that she has made that she cannot undo at this point, right? So when it comes to our emotional and mental well-being, that is something that we need to put ourselves, make ourselves responsible for, regardless of our religion, regardless of our spiritual beliefs. But the unfortunate thing is, if you were to do your own research, that there is a very strong psychosis between religious and spirituality. Okay, simply because in the world that we live in, especially in the United States, that we live in this society where you have to have all these, badges under you to make you a worthy person. You have to be popular, you have to be rich, you have to be, the perfect mom or the perfect wife or the perfect this and that. And when you feel as though you can't achieve that on your own, you will look to your religion and to your spirituality to fill in the gaps, so to speak. And once you realize those gaps are not being filled in by those things, it keeps us from looking within to fill those gaps of feeling like we're worthy, with or without those titles, with or without these things that people need to assume about us. There's so much division that we can't help but feel bad about things that are natural to us. Feeling bad about our skin color and our hair texture, or feeling bad about, where we were born and raised. Things that we can't control, we are judged by. So we do our best to control, how we are perceived. And unfortunately, everyone says, oh, well, if I'm spiritual, I'm doing the right thing. And, well, if I'm religious, I'm doing the right thing. Okay? And you're not wrong and you're not right. Everyone has a different path. Everybody has a different road to take in this life. But unfortunately, there are so many different ways to not only minimize, but outright downplay your worth on a day-to-day basis. Okay? There's always something that someone's going to make fun of you for. There's always going to be something that you're not good enough to in this person's eyes. There's just no pleasing anyone, right? And unfortunately, that's where a lot of religion and spirituality, or at least people who are into it, at least nowadays, they get wrong, where you really just got to take your ego out of it. You got to take your ego out of it, and you got to realize what's good for you. Okay, and unfortunately, sometimes that message gets very distorted, even along the way. Even when you are finding things that are good for you, it'll get slightly distorted, because then you start to realize that, oh, I can do something that's good for me and be popular and be accepted, and we start to build on that. Okay, but not to take away from the original subject of this episode, it's more like psychosis in itself. It's almost like it's making us believe that what we are believing, or what we are doing, or what we are feeling is in fact either all there is, okay, or is in fact all right. But it's not all right for everyone. It's just all right for you, right? It's all good for you. It's all there is for you, right? We're not the whole universe in one. We are, but we're not. I'm not everyone, right? And everyone is not me. So I could not say what works for me works for you, okay? But I do in fact feel that she took away the choices of her husband. She took his choice away, and she also took the choice away from her daughters. Okay, and then when she decided to end her own life, that's a choice she made specifically for herself, that was the only person she should have made a decision for that day. But unfortunately, the psychosis, I guess, made her feel like she was a god, okay, and that she knew exactly what she was going to be doing, and that what she was doing was right, that she didn't need to worry about everyone else's choice, that her choice was the right choice. Please let me know if this makes sense, because I do know it is in the middle of the retrograde and I can ramble on sometimes, but I'm trying to make the point. I hope I made the point, and I hope it makes sense to you. So let me know in the discussion, in the comments, or where I post this. Let me know if this makes sense to you, and let me know how we can in fact combat spiritual and religious psychosis, so we don't have incidences that happen like this regularly. If you have something to contribute to the conversation, please send me an email at ceo@karmazeyepsychic.com. Again, this is Christina with Karma's Eye Psychic LLC here on Universal Spirit Podcast, and I will see you in the next episode.